Hey, this is Michael Bohm with Youth Apologetics Training. Today we're going to talk some more about Wicca and witchcraft. Today we're going to be looking at the Wheel of the Year, the 8 Sabbats or festivals that Wiccans celebrate. And to be honest, guys, as far as apologetics goes, I'm not even sure how relevant this is really going to be. But if you have a family member or a friend who's involved with, or at least you suspect is involved with Wiccan witchcraft, and you see some paraphernalia or something pertaining to these festivals, well, I suppose that'll tip you off. There's others of you out there that just might find this interesting. I had a conversation with a dear Christian brother last night and made the comment, there's a lot of things that really aren't that important, but as a Christian, it's fun to follow rabbit trails every once in a while just to build your understanding of different things. Well, I suppose this is a big rabbit trail, but just looking at these festivals, it's just kind of interesting, and I want to throw it in there because Wiccans feel these are important. When I practiced witchcraft, I could care less about these Sabbats. Seriously, guys, I didn't care. All this information right now that I'm reading through, it's all new to me all over again because I never really, when I crossed this stuff while studying various things, it just, to me, it was like, whatever. I'm not going to go dancing around in the moonlight doing this stuff. I don't care. Well, Wiccans, again, are really into this whole nature worshiping, exaltation of nature, almost nature worship. And like we've already discussed, there are so many different versions of Wiccan that, really, you can't peg anything down. For example, there's 8 of these Sabbats, these feasts, but some groups only celebrate 6 of them. Some groups only celebrate 4 of them. I'm going to breeze through all 8 today. And, this is one of those podcasts that, some of you are going to listen to the first couple minutes and go, not really interested. And some of you are going to be like, well, that's kind of weird. I think I will keep listening. So for all of you out there that think, that's kind of weird, I think I'll keep listening. Well, then keep listening. These 8 Sabbats, pretty much, I'm going to read a quote that I found on Wikipedia concerning Wiccan because I think it's pretty good at just kind of illustrating how a Wiccan witch sees the progression of these Sabbats. This is what it says. It says, among Wiccans, the most common Wheel of the Year narrative is that of the god/goddess duality. In this cycle, the god is born from the goddess at Yule, which is around Christmas, grows in power at Vernal Equinox, along with the goddess who has now returned to her maiden aspect, courts and impregnates the goddess at Beltane, which is around May Day, May 1st, wanes in power at Lammas, might be mispronouncing some of these, passes into the underworld at Samhain, which is Halloween, then is once again born from her mother crone aspect at Yule. We're back to Christmas. The goddess in turn ages and rejuvenates endlessly, with the seasons being courted by and giving birth to the horned god. Versions of this myth vary from coven to coven, shifting the birth, conception, or death of the god to different Sabbats. Kind of weird. In my series about does Christianity copy the ancient mythical religions, you can find that on iTunes or Sermon Audio or my website, even better. It's all over the place. Anyway, I talk about how a lot of these supposed God myths of the past that, some on the internet claim us Christians copied, you'll notice that a lot of them, when they say that we copied the resurrection side of their stories, you will find that it really comes back to this. It's this whole the seasons, going through the seasons, and you have this birth, growing up, and then dying phase, just like going through the seasons, as you'll see here in a few minutes as we talk about this. That's what it all comes back to. So anyway, Wikipedia goes on and says, another solar narrative is of the Holly King and the Oak King, with one ruling the winter, the other the summer. These two figures battle with each other endlessly as the seasons turn. At midsummer, the Oak King is at the height of his strength, while the Holly King is at his weakest. The Holly King begins to regain his power, and at autumn equinox, the tables finally turn in the Holly King's favor. He vanquishes the Oak King at Yule. Then over the next months, as the sun waxes in power, the Oak King slowly regains his strength, and at the spring equinox, he begins to triumph until he once again defeats the Holly King at midsummer. So, kind of strange, kind of interesting. Let's look at these 8 Sabbats, the 8 festivals. And by the way, as we're looking at these, keep in mind, we're talking about Wiccans here. So, yeah, they're involved with witchcraft, and witchcraft is an abomination to our Lord. Just in case you missed that, I want to make sure you guys all know about that. It is an abomination to our God. God hates when people seek after power from a source that is not Him and seek to manipulate the world around them through these powers. God hates that. But, okay, having said that, Wiccans are generally kind of skipping through the forest with the bunny rabbits, do no harm to anybody kind of witches, if you know what I mean. They're generally pretty nice. They are absolutely against putting curses on people or sacrifices or any of that stuff that you generally think of when you think of witchcraft. Okay? They're into the happier stuff and some of the forms of witchcraft that don't hurt anybody. As we go through these Sabbats, you will notice there's no sacrificing, there's no dead chickens, there's no human heads flying in all directions. So there might be some pentagrams drawn on the ground, but it's pretty well, they're non-violent, non-bloody. They're more of celebrations, really. And while I'm at it, you'll notice I keep saying the word Sabbat. And doesn't that sound familiar to the Jewish Shabbat? These Sabbats came along long after God called for the Jews to celebrate their Shabbats. Okay, so if anybody copied anybody, we know who copied who. All right, so anyway, I keep saying let's jump into it. All right, let's jump into it here. So the first one that we'll talk about is Yule, and that is around the time of Christmas. It goes by many different names. Winter Solstice, Saturnalia, Alban, Arthan. There's so many names. Mother's Night, Winter Rite. Anyway, this is celebrating the rebirth of the great God, the newborn solstice sun, generally around December 25th, coincidentally. By the way, guys, Jesus was probably not born on December 25th, and some of you are nodding your head, and others of you are probably standing there in shock. He wasn't, and December 25th was a date that the Catholic Church assimilated farther down the road. I believe it was Constantine. I believe it was Constantine that did this, but don't quote me on it. It was the Catholic Church that picked up December 25th and declared it to be Jesus' birth. It is what it is. But as it goes, there are pagans of all flavors from around the world who have various beliefs centered around December 25th. All of them pertain to some kind of god, man, or just plain God being born. So it's kind of interesting. Anyway, as it is, they celebrate the rebirth of the sun god, basically, or the horn god, if you will. Next in line is, and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing this, Imbolc. And this is to celebrate Bridget's day. Who in the world is Bridget? Well, she's a Celtic goddess, and this celebration happens during the spring. It's supposed to be a time where they celebrate the coming of spring. And again, just reminding you guys, Wiccans are really into nature. And so their celebrations, really, they do a lot of centering around just the attributes and the cycles of nature. And it's a time where people usually do their spring cleaning, which the witches are into as well. And let's move on to another one, the Vernal Equinox. This one happens somewhere in around March 21st, and that's, okay, I should explain this at the beginning. These holidays take place on different dates depending on whether you're in the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere, because all of these festivals have to do with the placement of the sun and the moon and how the seasons are progressing through their cycles. So in order for them to do these correctly, witches who are in the southern hemisphere have to accommodate for their cycles in the southern hemisphere. And consequently, if you're a witch who lives on the equator, well, you got issues and you got to figure it out. And that's one of their contentions. But anyway, let's move on. The vernal equinox happens somewhere around March 21st in the northern hemisphere. It corresponds with Easter quite a bit. It represents the new birth, new life, planting seeds. Check this out. The Wikipedia says of this, it says, in terms of Wiccan Diceyism, this festival is characterized by the rejoining of the mother goddess and her lover consort son, who spent the winter months in death. Other variations include the young god regaining strength in his youth after being born at Yule, and the goddess returning to her maiden aspect. And moving on to Beltane, I'm trying to do this fast. Beltane is May Day. It's May 1st. Beltane is celebrated by a lot more than just the Wiccans, and we'll talk about that in other studies. Beltane is a high, unholy day in some circles. But anyway, it's celebrating fertility, and of course you guys have seen that the maypole, with the kids dancing around the maypole. If you don't know what I'm talking about, they got these ribbons and they crisscross them around the pole until they kind of tie a bunch of ribbons around a long pole. It's weird. Anyway, I did it when I was a kid once for a school thing. But anyway, it's kind of a feast enacting the union of the May Lord and Lady. We talked about this earlier. Strange stuff. But yeah, that takes place around May 1st, well, on May 1st, and it is a celebration of fertility, growth, love, passion, and just that whole idea of the sacred marriage between the god and goddess. All right? Moving on, let's look at Midsummer. Midsummer takes place in the northern hemisphere around June 21st, and it's the longest day of the year, and we're looking at basically this whole idea of the sun god's strength is decreasing now. It's getting to the point where it's decreasing, and it's a time of collecting herbs. And moving on, looking at, and I'm sure I'm mispronouncing this, but Lammas. around August 1st. It is the first of the 3 harvest festivals, and it pretty much revolves around just grains and bread. Some Wiccans will even bake bread in the shape of a man and then eat it, and it's supposed to symbolize the sanctity and importance of the harvest. So interesting. You know, these last 3 feasts of the year are really into just this whole idea of Thanksgiving. It really is similar in some respects to the American version of Thanksgiving. For example, the next one, the autumn equinox. Again, it's a ritual of basically celebrating the first fruits of the earth, and also the need to share the blessings that they have received, and they believe that in sharing them, they secure the blessings of the god and goddess for the winter months. And by the way, this autumn equinox also goes by the name Mabon. In fact, I think more often than not, I hear Mabon more than autumn equinox. And so after Mabon, we go into Samhain, which I mentioned earlier is Halloween. Sometimes it's pronounced Samhain. And of all the feasts, obviously this one would be the creepiest of them. They're celebrating, or rather giving respect to all of the deceased friends, relatives, even pets. It's just this time of the year where they believe, at least most of them believe, in fact, most of the witchcraft-based religions and belief systems out there believe that during Halloween, the veil between this world and the spiritual is the thinnest. Is that true? I don't know. But I think that's pretty interesting, don't you? And some of the creepiest stuff happens during that night too. Some of the most abominable practices happen on that night as well. Not by the Wiccans, but nonetheless, it is a wicked night indeed. But anyway, we're talking about the Wiccans here. And they believe in, well, that's a good night to try and communicate to these spirits. And you know what we call that? We call that necromancy. The Bible calls that necromancy, communicating with the dead. And that is one of the things in the Bible that is condemned. It's an abomination to our God, and we are not to participate in this kind of stuff. But you guys already know that. Anyway, guys, that's pretty much it. I mean, yeah, there's 20 minutes gone by, and you're kind of like, well, I don't know. Did I really learn something or not? That's what they do during those festivals. I hope that helps you. If it doesn't, well, whatever. Sometimes you lose, right? Anyway, that's it for this podcast. Come out to the website, youthapologeticstraining.com, and leave comments and questions. I do want to talk to you guys. And with that, I love you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.